Hi, everybody. Welcome again to a new webinar. Today, I'm super excited to have Bego joining us on the practitioner seat. And before we introduce each other, we call this webinar Courage to Experience a Meaningful Life. So, Bego, why don't you tell us what is courage and what do we mean by a meaningful life?
Well, first of all, about courage, I think that very often we think that courage is not feeling fear. And I think we are very much mistaken by that because, on the contrary, I believe that courage is actually to be able to feel the fear, to feel it in our body, to face it. And even with fear, being able to understand this fear, where does it come from, what is it telling us. Sometimes it's just a warning, there is a danger, and it's normal for the fear to arise, but still to be able to act on love and not on fear. So that will be courage. And I believe it's very related to a meaningful life. But to talk about a meaningful life, I think I need to go back to my teenage years when I was feeling very non-meaningful in my life. And basically I was struggling with a lot of very low self-esteem and eating disorders, really not accepting my body. And I also started studying law, and I was going, on the path that you are supposed to follow, like study, get a house, get a car, a good job, a family. And it was feeling everything but meaningful. And then is where my process of healing and therapy started. And then this started with feeling and becoming something that was more meaningful than anything else. And I believe it's this that, like, there is like a whisper when you feel this insatisfaction, this weird feeling of this is not it. Like, even if society tells me this is not it, there is something else coming from somewhere inside me that is telling me there is something else, this whisper. And I believe that we need the courage to be able to hear this whisper, because somehow it's taking us somewhere that is breaking with a lot of things that we've been told we need to follow. So this is the courage to be able to break this, but it's coming from our heart.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm excited to deep dive into this conversation because I know you have a lot to share from a personal side, from a professional side, from your practice as a therapist yourself. So let's just dive in. First of all, hello again. I'm Florencia, founder of Holiest, a platform where we curate holistic health practitioners, where we curate also well-being events, we create events, and Bego, or Begoña, as it's her full name, um, she's one of our trusted practitioners. And this one is very special, actually, because she's also a collaborator. We are joining forces to craft together this project to make it grow and get out there to more people. And Bego, I would love to pass the word again to you so you can tell us more about yourself, about your practice. So why don't you start telling us, how did you become a therapist?
Well, first of all, thank you, Florencia, so much. I'm also very excited, and it's a pleasure to work for this project and to work with you. And I believe that is in the practice also that we can experience holistic well-being. And this is something I'm experiencing with you. And as how I became a therapist, well, as I was saying, it was out of a need, actually. It was not like I'm there or I really got something that others didn't. I was just basically hurting. I was struggling with life, so I started my personal process of therapy. And I went through different kinds of therapy. There are so many different kinds of therapy approaches, and basically the ones that worked best for me, because the mind can lie to us a lot, but the body doesn't. So basically the ones that helped me the most were those that were approaching directly the body, how our emotions are stuck in our body, how the trauma manifests through our body, and also having like a transpersonal view, like a more holistic approach also, that we are just not like an isolated individual being, but that we are in a society, that maybe we believe in something that is a bit greater than us as well. This depends on the person, but basically like a more holistic approach is very helpful. So I went through this process of healing myself, and then I kind of fell in love with it. I realized how much we have this potential to grow, to heal, to transform. And I realized that it helped me so much to transform my life and myself and keep growing. And I keep growing and transforming and integrating, hopefully, that I just really wanted to start also offering this to others. I think that's it. I cannot hear you. Sorry.
Thank you. It happens to me often that I mute myself. I was saying lovely, and thank you for sharing that. I want also to keep getting into the courage topic. And why is courage important in a therapeutic process, if you can share?
Sure. Well, some call therapy the path of the courageous ones because it's very romanticized how we heal, no? Like you go to a fancy retreat and you feel good and it's beautiful. But if you want to heal deeply, you will for sure face things that are not easy, that are not beautiful, that are really hard to deal with. So here is where courage comes. You need to have the strength somehow, or really the intent, like the intention, the deep desire of going through this. Why? Because you believe that where you are right now, it's not the best place for you. Probably you got there because you are struggling with something, so you need to get through it. But in order to get through it, you need first to feel it. We need to feel many things that are not pleasurable for us. And this, I always say, it's not a very good marketing for therapy. But usually when people arrive, it's also because they are struggling with something and they really need to go through it, no? So unfortunately, you need to feel it in order to heal it, no? We say it like this. And the deepest you can feel it, the more you can go into the full of it, like really feeling, for example, fear completely in your body, the more it will be able to transform. And for this, for sure, we need courage. And the second reason why we need courage, I will say, is that you will start realizing that many things you believed in, like this, like the path of life is you study, you get a job, you get a family, you get a house, and that's it. And suddenly there is something that starts transforming in you, and you start realizing that that's not just it. And then you start need to break with a lot of patterns that we learn in society, that they are like this, or you learned in your family or in your environment that your life should be in a certain way. And sometimes it happens when we are young, but sometimes it happens when you are 40, 50. And then you need the courage to be able to transform all your life. Sometimes we really need to change our lives a lot. And for sure, this needs a lot of courage.
Interesting. This sounds like a lot of challenging the status quo, and this is fascinating to me. I mean, some people can really flourish in this system as it is, but many others, they really struggle, and we know it. And it's interesting because you mentioned fear, and all that you were sharing sounded like a bit feeling for healing, and all of this. Sometimes I find it a bit scary. So can you explain a bit more what's the role of fear then in therapy, because or in healing processes, because it can sometimes stop us from getting into the depth of feeling, right?
Mm-hmm. We are kind of scared of some emotions, no? And we have this very much in our minds that how some emotions are positive and basically joy or happiness, and this is positive, and the rest of it it's negative, no? Sadness, anger, fear. But they are just like responses of our system to external situations, no, or to circumstances. So they are not positive or negative. They are just actually they are kind of functional, because fear, the purpose of fear is to warn us from a fear from like a threat, from a situation that can be dangerous for us, that maybe our system cannot confront or cannot deal with. And it's just telling us like, hey, be careful, this can be dangerous for you. So actually it's healthy to be in touch with our fear, to feel it, like if there is a real danger out there, I want to be able to realize, I want my body, my system to tell me like, hey, there is something there that can be dangerous. And it's the same, anger is there in order for us to put limits. So when my limits are being not respected, then anger comes out to say, hey, I need to put a limit. You cannot pass from here. But we really suppress these emotions, thinking that they are not accurate or they are not accepted, or we are not going to behave correctly if we just feel them. And of course, like the crazy not crazy, but like the extreme express of it, it's not the healthy response. But to feel them and learning how to deal with them and having tools to deal with them, that this is something we do in therapy, right? This is it has all the sense and it's all the functions of it. Of course, some are easier. Feeling joy is always easier, but if we learn to deal with them and we learn to feel them and give them a space, all of them in a way can be pleasurable somehow. Even sadness, because sadness brings us into ourselves, asks to us to give us ourselves space to process something or to integrate something. It connects us within.
I really wonder how it would be to feel pleasure through all of the emotions. It reminds me a bit of the movie. You remember this movie Inside Out? And
I love it.
yeah, it's really nice. I wonder if people also know it. But can you tell us a bit more how it would be? I don't know if we can translate it into words, to feel pleasure through emotions, because that's really something that blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah, well, I don't know if maybe pleasure I went too much there, but for sure, Reich is Wilhelm Reich is one of the fathers, or basically the father of like the bioenergetics. That is what very similar to what today we call the body mind therapy, and he worked a lot with the energy and the energy flowing in our body and how this is related to our psychology. And he explained that when we go fully into an emotion and like we are processing something, like we arrive to this catharsis, like it will be like going fully into the process, not like letting the body completely surrender to the process, psychologically as well. And there he used to say that we feel an orgasm that is not sexual by itself, but in our energy. And like when you are experiencing something to the fullest and you arrive to this peak, like to this. So imagine that you explode in this anger that is being suppressed all these years, and suddenly you are free to fully in this safe and hold space, that you are free to express it at the fullest. Imagine how relieving this can feel. So maybe not all of them are like pleasurable always, but for sure there is this release in the body, that feels just right. Like, yes, I have the right to be fully angry and to be fully sad and to cry, and maybe your heart is broken, but you are not like opposing to it. So then it just becomes energy that is flowing just as naturally as joy flows or as a sexual orgasm flows.
Fascinating, Bego. The way you put it, it just seems right. And at the same time, there's so much to uncover to try to, if we want to try to explain it, of course. And I would like to touch on a topic, on the topic of trauma. And if you can explain it a little bit, how does trauma also play a role into crafting a meaningful life? If that's a correct question, otherwise you just please touch on it, because I find it important, and it can be part of what blocks us from finding the right therapist and going into a deep process.
For sure. So trauma, now we hear a lot about trauma. It's kind of a fashion talking about trauma. And sometimes we go as if trauma is something very big, very special. Yeah, like you had this trauma only. It seemed also for some time it seemed that they only suffered trauma people that, I don't know, went to war or things like that. But we all experience trauma up to a level in our lives, because trauma is kind of this how like a challenging, tough experience, especially in our childhood, when our system is still very sensitive, very vulnerable, and suddenly something from the reality outside there touches our system, and this is too much for our system, and we cannot deal with it, so it gets stuck. Like somehow instead of us processing it, something that maybe now even we could deal with it, but imagine as a child you get scared with something, and this can already somehow get stuck, creating a pattern that it's not like doesn't help you to respond like in a more natural or conscious or more like measured way with the reality, but it triggers you all the time going back to that experience that created this like stagnation in your system. So if, for example, I got very scared with a dog when I was very little and this impacted my system, now maybe every time somehow a dog is around, I go there and my system feels this little fear. And this, of course, it has a lot to do with a meaningful life, because it's also, in a way, it's not, neurosis is like more complex than just the trauma, but it's a big part of it, no? And this is how we filter our reality with our experiences that got somehow this like stuck or made us believe things, or created like limiting ideas in ourselves. And then this is like we put some glasses, and instead of having the clean glasses, we have them covered with all these filters that are the trauma, the neurosis, etc. And then we are not free to choose from within, from what we really want or what we really feel. We choose through these glasses that are covered with so many filters. And then we say this, that we are not free because we are conditioned by our neurosis and by our trauma.
Wow, you're touching in so many topics that I'm going to try to keep up, because I feel because it's fascinating, Bego. And I mean, in our audience, I don't know, we have some people who are practitioners and therapists, and also people who are trying to start some sort of therapy. And yeah, I hope that all of this information gives them the courage to explore, because you're sharing really, really deep concepts, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate how you put it into like simple way of understanding it. So thank you for that on the side of trauma. And then I think this comes right after. I would like to understand better. How would you describe a healing process then? What is a healing process?
Mm-hmm. So as we were talking before, I will say that the main thing of the healing process is, first of all, to feel, to learn to feel. Like I remember we were talking with one of my training groups, how now we practice together and everybody just goes like this, what do you feel? I feel this here and I feel this, and this is anger. And I was telling them, yes, but this doesn't happen when you start therapy. I remember when I started therapy and my therapist telling me, what do you feel? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do I feel? I'm right. I'm fine, and so I think that the first thing is to learn to feel, to learn to be in touch with it. And somehow we need to like re-educate ourselves into this, into being in touch with our sensations, with our feelings, to recognize, this is anger. And when this happens, I get angry. Sometimes you have this face and they tell you, are you angry? And you're like, no, I'm fine. And of course you are angry. Everybody's seeing it but you. So yeah, for sure, starting being familiarized with it and allowing yourself to feel all this, recognizing that you have the permission, first of all, to feel it. Second, to express it, First of all, in a therapy session, you are in a safe, hold space with somebody that can go with you through the process of expressing. And I think we need to take all this out, all the anger I couldn't express, all the sadness I could never feel, all the fear. And then slowly, it's like you start bringing the pieces of the puzzle together. I was so angry about this because this happened and this causes me all this, So after feeling, being conscious about it, being able to express it, learning how to then, of course, having also like better ways to express it, because okay, in therapy everything is allowed, but out there is not everything allowed. And in therapy you can punch the pillows and you can yell, but not in real life. You are in a meeting with your boss, you cannot start yelling, no. But now you know that you can always go to your room or to your private space and yell it out, like just express it, just let it out. But then you also know how to deal with it in a group, in society, out there with a person. So feeling it, expressing it, learning how to deal with emotions in general. And all this will already start creating like a more open flow. One of my favorite teachers, he's called Carlos de Leon, and he explains a lot about this, how we are opening the flow, how we are making our flow of energy become like if we are a river of water and we are full of, like these little trash, like these stones here and these branches here, and the water, the river doesn't really flow. But when we start cleaning it, then the flow starts flowing a lot more openly. And this is one of the main functions of this process. And then we bring the pieces together and we start understanding in a deep way a lot more all these things that were blocking me and I didn't know why, all these fears I had and I didn't know why. Because when you go through the experience of feeling and expressing, a lot of memories starts just kicking in, and then you get it like, my father told me this and my mom used to do this and I used to see, and then all the pieces start coming and then you create your puzzle. So it's like your flow is more open and you have your puzzle that gives you a lot of clarity. And okay, this is a process for life, like I don't believe anybody just has it like in 1 year. Sometimes we are a bit impatient with therapy. But of course, it doesn't mean you need to be in therapy for all your life. It just means that then you also start learning how to do it by yourself, how to put the pieces by yourself, how you already know how to express, you already learn how to feel. And I will say this could describe it more or less.
Yeah, I love how empowering that sounds, because you're putting it in a way that, yeah, we are going to learn to feel, because I felt it was so true when you said it. And I feel identified myself, because when sometimes people ask, how are you doing, or how do you feel, I bounce between good or okay or fine, and there's such a huge range of feelings and emotions. So yeah, that stayed with me. Learning to feel is part of the beautiful things that therapy can give us, right? All right. And this is why we focus on feeling beautiful. Bego, I wonder, in your practice, no, with you as a practitioner, holding space and accompanying people through the process of healing, what are the most common desires or struggles people have when they come to your practice, if you can share?
Sure. Okay, first of all, I think there is one struggle that we all share, and it seems very simple, but it is actually quite painful. And this is that since we are born, in a way or another, society and the environment tells us that the way we are, just the way I am, with all my qualities and all my mistakes and all everything, I'm not worth it enough, or I'm not accepted, or just by the way I am, I don't have a place in this world. And this, in a level, it happens to all of us. And this, as I said, it seems very simple, but it's very painful, because imagine this, it means I myself, who I am, who I truly am, I don't have a place in this world. So this manifests in many different ways. It can be more like insecurity or like pride, but at the end, we are all trying to cover this somehow, we all need to feel accepted, we all need to feel loved, we all need to feel like we can be ourselves. But I will say that even if it manifests in many different ways, and some desires are more like, I don't know, I have problems with my family, I want to learn how to deal with them better, or I'm a bit lost in my life, or I feel very insecure, I have problems in my like romantic relationships or sexual relationships. Like, these are some of the topics that I see often, but I believe that everything at some point goes back to this like wound that we all share.
Interesting. And what do you mean when you say that everyone has a wound?
Yeah, I think it's this that I was sharing, how in a way we all at some point got it that the way we are wrong. So this also like censures a lot, like stops a lot our authenticity, because then we understand that, for example, if I get angry, I'm not accepted by my environment when I'm a child. Or if I like painting, but I'm expected to study very well or a lot, then I'm not accepted, but I love painting. Or so, of course there are environments that are friendlier and that allow yourself to express more how you are, but in a way or another, this we get it, all of us at some point, because really we live in a world that is very, I don't know, that likes putting a lot of limits, especially, for example, when we are women, we receive all the time messages how our bodies, just the way they are not right. You always need to correct something. Men also get this message in a different way. So we are always getting messages how we need to be more or do it better or be different. And this is the wound. The wound is this pain inside that is making us feel that it's not okay just the way I am. It's not okay just by what I do. It's not okay if I just go and enjoy it and do what I like and act from my heart and relate to the people I want. I need to do something else, that it's not what I really am. And this is our main, this is this wound I was talking about. I don't know if it made it clearer.
Thank you. No, it really clarifies. Thank you so much. And it actually makes me think of many times that we have talked about authenticity. And this makes me wonder if we can really manage then to be authentic in this world or society. I mean, I know cultures are different, but all of this that you were sharing sounds like it really blocks us from such authenticity. I wonder what's your take, if you can share with us. Can we really manage to feel authentic then?
Something that I'm calling it lately, and I also share it with the people I give therapy to, is this, in Spanish I say el fenómeno me chupa un huevo, but in English we could translate it something like the phenomena of not giving a fuck or something like this. And it's basically learning to answer to my inner call first, not from a selfish place, because as long as we grow and evolve, we all should at least be developing compassion. And if you also grow in compassion, it's not like I don't care about anybody else, it's just me. Please, I will never encourage this path, no? Because I also think it's a bit dangerous, because now it's a bit in fashion also, like I go first and I don't care about me. And of course, yes, you go first and we need to take care of ourselves, but still with empathy and compassion for others. But at the same time, sometimes we just know that it just feels right inside us. Like, I know I want to do this, and still people sometimes don't agree, don't like it, they will judge me. But if I'm really connected with my true self, in this place inside me, and I know it feels in my whole body that this is right, then I need to have courage again and be able to hold this and say, yeah, I might not be loved or accepted, or I won't receive any applause or any recognition, but I don't give a fuck. This is what I really believe in. This is what I really want to do. And then this is when we are authentic. When, despite what the environment is telling us or what we receive from the outside, whether people will like us or not, we are still coherent with ourselves. And this is, I believe, the price of it all, because sometimes the price is really it's really high. You might lose people that you don't want to lose. You will be criticized maybe, and this is the place where you need to stand in your own feet and really be able to recognize what is your internal voice and act again in coherence with this. And then there is also this feeling of bliss, that you are respecting yourself.
Oh my God, yes, yes. I was just really affirming when you were talking, because you then went into coherence that really makes a lot of sense, because it brings just so much peacefulness and it's energizing. But it sounds super challenging how you were describing it, because it's really like a process of as I hear it, self-acceptance and yeah, maybe sometimes disappointing our surroundings. So challenging, really, Bego. But going to coherence, now that you mentioned, and also it's one of our values at Holly, is like feeling, acting, doing in the same direction. Again, many times challenging. So this brings me to another thing that it's all weaved into together, right? That we discussed with you about self-power, because all of this, the courage to experience your life in a meaningful way, it sounds very empowering. So I wanted to ask your take on self-power, like what it takes to stand into that power that we all have inside.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting you bring this up. Actually, these days I was feeling a little like, oh, we call this webinar the courage of experiencing a meaningful life, and I was feeling stuck. I was not feeling courageous. I was like, all the imposter syndrome came, like how I'm going to talk about courage. And then I realized that yeah, I don't need to have it figured out, the same way that I don't need to figure it out with courage or with power. And also power is another word we really have a lot of associations that might not help to explain what personal power might mean. And then I realized that, I also, this is authenticity, I don't want to play like I figure it out and this is why I help you. No, I went through a process that was not easy. It helped me so much, and I still have to go forward and back many times, but I do believe I have a lot more resources to face it now. And in a way, it's also similar with personal power, no? Personal power is having a lot more this capacity of acting in accordance with our true self, with who we really are, and being able to come out to the world with this, with all this potential, no? I don't have it figured out, but I like believing that I walk in this path, no, and that I love also seeing how when we are in therapy and I'm accompanying another person in the process, how you really see the person like recovering parts of themselves that somehow got lost at some point in their lives. And for sure, this creates like a lot richer life, basically, where yes, you have more capacity to choose, yes, you have more capacity to manifest, yes, you have more capacity to act according to yourself. And all this will be somehow personal power as well, no? And like creating magic. And especially for women, we have like this extra card that we can play, that is the capacity of creation that is in our womb. Not only human life, but like we have like an extra battery of energy there, that with this alchemy that it has to create human lives, we can also create so many things. So when we connect to this, to the magic of our womb, and especially when it's connected to our heart, then we somehow recover this capacity for creating. It can be a baby, but it can also be like a art project, it can be a business, it can be a house, I don't know, so many things. And I think that again, we can really see how the world manages to disconnect us from our womb by so many ways, like painkillers, pills, etc. And this is another whole process, like reconnecting with the feeling, the temperature, the pulsation of our womb, and of course the magic, the creation magic that there is there.
Wow, they go fascinating, and two big topics again. I feel like you're almost like a box of Pandora opening like fascinating topics to really understand ourselves. And before we keep diving into womanhood, because that's a topic we want to touch on, you also mentioned manifesting, and this is also very trendy at the moment, and for a couple of years it's been there. It's a it's a topic, let's say, that to me at least it brings mixed feelings. Sometimes it's a very yicky or woo, but also like I get excited about it. So at the same time I feel some rejection sometimes, because the what's mainly in the mainstream is very capitalistic oriented, so focus on manifesting, especially, I don't know, wealth or material stuff, which is great. But I really want to know your take on manifesting your desires, your dream life. Do you have to say about that?
Well, I totally agree with you. It also happens this to me, that sometimes it creates this not clear, like a bit of rejection even on the way it's presented. But I think this is also related to everything that we've been talking about. In a way, if we have these glasses we were talking about, the neurotic glasses, then probably our desires to be manifest will also be neurotic. Like maybe it's the child asking to be recognized. So I really want to be successful in life, or I really want to drive a Ferrari. But what does it mean for you to drive a Ferrari? Like it's all good about wanting to drive a Ferrari, but really, is this your deep life desire to drive a Ferrari? Is this really what you want to manifest in this world? And when we grow, as we said, we also grow in compassion. So we also probably should desire in a compassionate way. And this is why I will say that a lot of our desires in general are neurotic at the beginning, and how even therapy can help us to get to deeper, more genuine, more honest desires of our inner self. And then it's a whole different thing. Maybe you start fantasizing with having an easier life, a simpler life, to be able to have more time with your family or to spend more time in nature. And this sounds a little more honest to me.
Interesting. Yeah, because it really weaves in again into coherence, right? Because I hear a lot, and it can really be so frustrating when you're trying to think very hard about something you might desire and then it doesn't happen. So when you mentioned the word neurotic, it impacted me. I mean, it sounds like a strong word for me, and I would love if you can explain a little bit more. How can we distinguish if we're desiring or trying to work with a dream that comes from a neurotic self, or however you want to call it, or egoistic self, I don't know, versus when it's a true aligned coherent desire? Is that something that we can really distinguish?
It's a good question. The first that comes to mind is that it's only you that can know this, but it basically comes to the feeling that it produces. If it brings you peace, like something that is really falling inside, that is coming into place, I will say then it comes from within. When it's all this a bit in the air, even a little bit anxious, like I want it, I want it, I want it. This to me sounds more neurotic, because then it's more like in the fantasy, but it's not embodied somehow, when it's more genuine, when it really comes from within, when it's really from your true voice, it's from your whole self. It comes with all of it. It's like, yes, this is right for me. And then you connect to it, and it's like, it feels right in every cell of my body. If not, it's more like it's a race. It will never be enough, because the little child, even if they get to drive the Ferrari won't be satisfied, because the true desire that is, I don't know, imagine feeling safe because I have the economical system that supports me in order for me to get a Ferrari. This could be like the reason that takes me there, no? But then the little child won't feel that finally he's safe or she's safe because now they are driving a Ferrari. The wound will still be open. So even if I get the Ferrari, there will be something going around that will say, that was not it.
It really makes me think of some like public figures, political figures, because it's how you're describing it is like, yes, some sort of success doesn't guarantee that you will be like a fully fulfilled person. Yeah, thank you for explaining, Bego. A lot of embodiment I hear, and with this, I would like to call back to the very beginning of the webinar when you were introducing what we meant about all of this, and there's a point where you mentioned working with and through the body, and I'd love to touch on that, and also to bring in vulnerability, because yeah, opening up and feeling, as you were describing, I mean, in a safe space with a trustworthy practitioner, yes, but it's like really opening up to the unknown, that it's there buried. So if you could share also from your own path, from your personal experience, how to navigate this working through and with the body, touching on that vulnerability again, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, in general, many times we are a bit scared of vulnerability, but I'm also falling in love with it a bit, because I realize how many precious gems are hidden in our vulnerability, and what it seems vulnerability, sometimes it's huge strength, and what it seems strength, many times it's actually hidden vulnerability. And as I was telling you, like, when I thought about this, like, we are doing this webinar, but I'm not really feeling like the super powerful, courageous person. I'm the therapist, I got it all. And then I realized, no, we are also humans. Nobody has it figured out. Don't trust in a therapist that tells you that they have it figured out. Nobody does. But we are all vulnerable, and this also makes us human, and this also brings us closer. Like, we cannot get close if we don't share vulnerability. So yes, I think that this is also related to working with and through the body, because once we are in touch with, like, with the body, with the skin, with the rawness of our, like, body and emotions and system, then we understand how vulnerability is also part of us, and how we can go a lot deeper if we dive into it. And basically working with and through the body, and I like also saying it like this, with, because we work with it, but we really go through it. And it's a bit what I was explaining, how when you go into a deep therapy process, working with the body, you go to like every layer, like to so many things that are hidden. We also learn, for example, in the school I've learned body mind therapy, we learn how to you read the neurosis in the person's body, so they get in their underwear or whatever, and not needed in a therapy session, I mean, but we train like this, when you see, or in the beach, for example, you can see the bodies, and you can see so many things. There is so much information, because you realize here there is this insecurity, or here there is this need to show power, but it seems so inflated, it seems so fake. So going into every little information, every little body, every little point in the body that is by itself containing so much information, so much, basically information, but also blockages, sometimes even gems that were hidden. For me, it's very rich and very like nurturing. It's like really going under the skin.
Again, I mean, beautiful and challenging at the same time. Bego, I wonder then if you can give us some advice to find a trustworthy therapist. What are things or signs that we have to look into a therapist, a practitioner that can really be a good match, that can really support this whole process that you have been describing that happens in a deep therapy?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, you said trustworthy, and I will say that this trust is the first main part. Like you really need to trust the person, and here I will say like trust your gut, because you will need to open up in so many ways that you really want to be with somebody that you feel you can trust. And this is many times just a feeling that we have. But of course, apart from that, I will say always a therapist needs to have been through a personality process, so they can really relate, understand, and being able to hold space. This I will also think is an important thing, to hold space to whatever, because many therapists, they haven't been through like a deep process of self-healing, and then somebody really gets angry or really, like in a catharsis, and they get scared. I've seen it in my training sometimes, other trainings I tried before, how they stop the process because you can see how they cannot handle it, and then the person starts going into catharsis and they're like, breathe, relax, and the person is there ready to explode, ready to go so deep, and sometimes the therapist cannot hold it. So of course the training that is accurate and everything, but sometimes we focus so much in the certificate or whatever, and this doesn't necessarily say that the therapist will be good, that will be able to hold space, that will be able to relate, to really see through you, through your process. Then I will say there are some red flags, like therapists shouldn't ever tell you what to do or give you advices that are not asked, or I would say that at the beginning a lot of talking, it's necessary usually, but up to a point it's good if you also do other kind of things that are more through the body or through symbols or different kind of approaches. And I don't know if I'm missing anything, but basically that, like if you can have references and somebody that can, and of course that you feel that won't be judging you, that are compassionate, that can really hold your hand even in your hardest moments, and also celebrate the victories, of course. Yes, I think that will be it. Trust your guts after all.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
try. You can always try and see how it's going, and if you are not getting anywhere, then you can always change.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Sometimes it takes a couple meetings and testings to find the right professional, because it can be really life transforming to connect with that person who can really take you by the hand and hold the space like fully for yourself. So yeah, thank you, Bego. And also, as we say always in Holias, like it is the qualifications and the capacity, the skills, the life experience, because honestly, like qualifications without the embodiment is really not necessarily useful, and that's something that's important to consider when we're going to dive into a very vulnerable and transformative process. Bego, I had another question before we dive into the chat questions, because we left there the womanhood, and I know you specialize in women, and you touched again on self-power through creation. You mentioned our womb, and I wonder like how courage plays a role. Why or how is the process special or different in any way for women when we have to transform ourselves, show courage, step into our self-power?
So basically it's different in two ways, and of course this is we are generalizing because we are all unique. Doesn't matter the sex or the gender or anything, no, but there are two reasons why there is some difference. One for sure is cultural. Like I studied anthropology before I started training into therapy, and this has helped me a lot also to like have a more holistic mindset, including like society and culture. And this really is part of the way I work, because there are so many established values and non-spoken rules, etc., and women, we have especially been taught how to, it's better when we are quiet, we really need to behave, don't go out to the world so much. And it's a whole process to get through that. So that will be one thing. And the other thing is that, like, for example, if we go back to like the traditions in India, they also talk about this. But basically, it's about how, because of the woman, the capacity to create from there, we have like this, as I was saying, like extra battery that men can also develop it, but it takes, and this we get a little more like mystic, let's say, but for who enjoys it or is into this, it's very interesting, because we have this like full potential for creation that is already there, and men somehow in their energetic system, and we are only talking about this part, they need to develop it, but we already have it. There is like this force of energy is already pulsating in our womb. Our womb has its own pulsation, and it's there ready to create, to manifest, to bring things into life, like it's its property, right? And connecting with this and recognizing this, it's also like a life changing, because now we know I have this extra card to play.
I was saying that sounds really fascinating. And I know you facilitate sometimes some in-person workshops on feminine and masculine energy. So those are things, I mean, I'm not going to go ahead, but those are things people can find already on your profile on Holios, because this is a really beautiful practice that you facilitate. Just if someone was curious to deep dive into what you were sharing. Bego, let's dive into Q&As. We have a couple questions.
Sure.
Okay, let's see. What do we have? First one. Okay, is it possible to become therapy dependent?
I believe so. And this is mainly on the hand of the therapist, because suddenly we have somebody there that is helping us, that is holding our hand. And again, for the little kid that is living inside us, this can feel very secure, very safe. And I think it's part of the process that eventually the therapists need to realize that, okay, you are ready to start walking by yourself. And it's like a transition, where, okay, we've been working on all this in the therapy sessions, and now how you will be able to apply all this to your life. And of course, if sometimes you need, like a catch up in the therapy, you are welcome to come. But eventually, I will say that if the person doesn't suggest it, then the therapist should suggest it. Like, it's time to start closing this process, etc.
Yeah, so this brings us back again to how important it is to choose the right person. Thank you, Bego. We also have another one, a bit long. Okay, it says, I've had lame experiences with therapists. I'm not sure I can trust someone with my process again. Any advice?
Well, I will need to know a bit more about like what experiences, what is the process. But yes, for sure. I mean, sometimes a bad therapy can be worse than non-therapy, and this is why I think Holias does a great work to really have like a curated like agenda of therapists. I mean, first of all, I'm sorry you had a terrible experience or a lame experience, and I'm sure you can find a therapist that can really help you, but maybe then it's time for you to like explore a little bit first what you really need, like what's your main struggle, what kind of therapy approach can help you the most. And then I will say ask around people that have good experiences with therapists. or go to like places that they can really recommend you. I was saying like Holias does this, like they recommend therapists that they know personally and they trust in. But then yes, if not, always asking around to somebody that might suggest to you a therapist that really worked well for them. I will say that's the best way.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I'm also sorry about when I hear from those experiences, because that can sometimes block us from trying again. And actually, if someone really feels that needs that help and support, know that there's a lot of really good practitioners, holistic health therapists, and psychotherapists that they are out there. It's just, this world, and this Bego from practice, it has been a lot through word of mouth for a reason. And it's because trust again, and knowing where we are heading to, or at least knowing that we are going into trustworthy and safe hands, it's important. So yeah, asking around, of course, we are making a big work there, trying to curate really trustworthy practitioners. And by that I mean people that we would put our hands in fire to for their practice. We've tried them, and we know their ethics, and that's very important. So thank you, Bego, for sharing that. We have one question left in the chat, so here we go.
This is the life phenomenals. How could one know if the therapy process is taking us to a deep level, or if it's remaining superficial? Okay, I think this is a very good question, and I think the key here is to see if there are fruits in your life. Like if things are actually changing, if you are managing, like you realize that you're acting different in your life to similar situations. Like I used to get super angry about this, and I don't care so much anymore, or I was very scared of doing this and now I'm managing to do it. Like you are actually transforming your life, and you really see that you yourself are transforming. Then this means you are really going deep and healing. If nothing changes, therapy is not working. So in that way, I would say it's kind of easy to, well, kind of easy. It's never so easy in practice, but that will be the key to see if therapy is giving fruits.
Thank you, Bego. I imagine there's a lot of patience also required, because at the same time, like, I wonder how long it takes to know that you're seeing changes, for example.
Yeah, well, of course, it might take a bit, but like little changes can happen quite quickly. And at the beginning, maybe the changes are only now I can feel, then now I can express, then now I can recognize, I can manage better, then now I can go beyond. So it's like steps. And the process can be as long and as deep as the person wants. We don't force anybody to go deeper if they don't want to. But yes, I think it's step by step, but you always see like this little click.
Right. Yeah, it sounds subtle, but transforming. So yeah, it's important to pay attention. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anything else you would like to say before we're close to wrapping up?
No, not on my side.
Well, Bego, thank you again. It was fascinating to talk to you. I want to say to everyone that they can also reach out to you already. I mean, I know you're very busy this coming months, but Bego is already listed on Holias, and you can request to book a session with her, discovery calls, or well, you can tell us more, Bego, about your agenda and what's coming up.
Sure, yes. I will be starting to take people again in June, probably, like mid-end of June. And yeah, I like to do it precisely because of this, because it's not easy to choose a therapist. I always like offering like a 30 minutes call where I explain a little bit how I work. The person can explain to me what they are looking for, and we can see if like there is a match. So of course, if anybody is interested, then you can just contact me for this like first call. This is for free, of course, and it's just to get to know each other and get to know if we are what each other is looking for.
Nice. Thank you, Bego. Okay, so I think that's a wrap. Thank you everyone for joining. Thanks for the questions. We will see each other in the next webinar. So during the month of May, we will also be hosting webinars, some of them hosted by me, some of them hosted by Bego, because she also has this other role as part of building Holiest. So that's it for today. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much for it. It was great talking to you as always.